An operation to identify and remove high-risk foreign criminals has led to a significant increase in those who've left the UK, according to a new report. With a review of Operation Nexus by Chief Inspector of Borders and Immigration, John Vine, found there is room for improvement. Well, let's chat about this now with Tony Smith, who's the former Director General of the UK Border Force, now a global border security consultant. He's in our Westminster studio, as you can see now. Tony Smith, thanks very much indeed for talking to us. I wonder if you could perhaps explain to us, first of all, exactly what Operation Nexus sets out to do.
Well, it's really getting the police and the Immigration Enforcement Department of the Home Office to work closely together. I mean, that's always been going on, Anna. But this really takes things to a new level. And where we're talking about serious criminals in our communities who can't necessarily be dealt with through the criminal justice system, arrangements now are in place where actionable intelligence can be passed by the police to the immigration authorities who can check that person's immigration status, find out whether or not they are a British citizen, and if they're not a British citizen, find out whether or not we can deport them. And I'm pleased to see this is now making progress, and over 85 people, I think now, have been deported from the UK who are high harm criminals. And this wasn't happening before because that sort of actionable intelligence was not being used for deportation purposes. So in that respect, you know, communities are safer as a result of the immigration enforcement agencies working closely with police on that. And the other thing in London in particular is that now it's more routinely the case that people who are arrested by the police for whatever reason are checked against immigration records before they're released. And an immigration officer is called out if there is the likelihood of an immigration offence taking place. That hasn't routinely been the case in the past, and it's certainly not routinely the case in other forces around the country. And so, you know, both of those things taken together indicate that we are now, I think, finding more immigration offenders, removing more offenders, but I think more importantly, removing these serious criminals from the country and disrupting organised crime in our communities.
Well, yes, and one of the most significant features which you touched on there was this idea of stationing immigration officers at police custody suites. Do you expect a step like that and Operation Nexus more broadly to be rolled out into other parts of the country? Because if you can explain to us, it's not everywhere at the moment, is it?
Well, no, it's not. This has been specifically an operation between the Metropolitan Police and Immigration Enforcement with another pilot going on in the West Midlands. I mean, the department has indicated it does want to roll it out to other parts of the country. Of course, we do need to bear in mind, Anna, that you know, resources are limited, both in the police and in the Home Office, and so we can't put immigration officers in all police stations. It's really a question of identifying those areas and those communities, those London boroughs, those inner London areas, where there are, you know, there is intelligence to suggest that there are a significant number of harmful criminals operating in the community, getting the intelligence right and deploying the resources that we have to the right places at the right time. That may mean embedding officers in some police stations. In others, it will mean some kind of an alternative response mechanism. How
much of a problem is this? You say that this Operation Nexus is making improvements, but how much of an issue is it, given that in October the National Audit Office produced a report, and in that report it talked about failed attempts to prevent serious offenders from coming into the country, delays and missed opportunities to deport them after committing new crimes and serving jail terms. You say there's an improvement, but is there a long way to go? Would you agree with that?
I think there's more that can be done, and I mean, not just here, but I mean, this is something that other countries are wrestling with as well, Anna, which is how do we identify criminals or would-be criminals before they come to the UK? So, you know, through our visa systems, we are able to identify people. We have a biometric visa system in this country. We are able to run fingerprints to see if they've committed crimes in this country. What's more difficult is where people have committed crimes in other countries. There's no global database of criminals or serious criminals, and so we do rely very much on intelligence to identify people before they come. I think the mission really for most border agencies, including here, is to try and export the border and to stop bad people and bad goods, for that matter, arriving in the country in the first place, and that does mean we need better systems. And of course, the other thing is we do need comprehensive exit checks so we know who's left the country and who hasn't, and so we don't waste any time chasing people who are no longer here.
I'm interested in you talking about criminals and would-be criminals. I mean, presumably the only way in which you can send someone back is if they have been convicted of a crime in another country.
Well, that's when they're already into the country, but there are rules in place which enable us to refuse people who've committed crimes overseas. For example, where somebody's committed a serious offence, then there is a reason, if they're a foreign national, not to admit them to the UK. The difficulty we have is you don't necessarily have that information available to us. So we are working with other countries to try to get that information, particularly in Europe, where there is an initiative now to try to bring criminal records under one umbrella. So we would know if, you know, a European citizen had committed a crime before they came here, but that's not really in place yet. So it is still possible, particularly in Europe with freedom of movement, for criminals to come into this country who may well have committed crimes in Europe that we wouldn't know about in the first place.
OK, Tony Smith, interesting to get your views this afternoon. Thank you very much.